It's 2019 and there's a ton of different gimbals out there on the market, but which one is the best? And to be honest with you guys, there is no such thing. Every gimbal has its pros and its cons and different form factors for different types of shooting. Now, for you guys that have been watching this channel for the past year, you've seen me using a bunch of different types of gimbals and their setups that I like to use. For today's video, I'm gonna be giving you guys some cool tips and tricks on different gimbal movements and which gimbal I picked up for traveling to Peru coming up. So, what gimbal am I going with for 2019 when it comes to traveling? It is going to be the Zhiyun Weebill Lab. Now, this little guy has a lot of cool features and I'm liking it so far. It has a bunch of cool locks on the motor so that nothing is moving. And overall, I went with this gimbal when it comes to traveling for its tiny footprint. So for today's video, whether you're interested in the Weebill Lab or you just want to learn some better movements for your gimbal, stay tuned. We're going to go over how to dial in your orbiting shots, how to dial in settings on any gimbal so that you get that ultimate cinematic footage. And then I'm going to show you some cool tips and tricks with different accessories and movements that I like to do for my films. So this upcoming July, I'm going to be heading out to Peru with Nate in the Wild and Around Q filming a Sony workshop. And being that I'm going to be packing super minimal, I want to be able to have everything in my everyday backpack. So that means clothes, lenses, tripod, gimbal, pretty much everything. And being that I have other gimbals that are a lot larger, I don't want to have to travel with that. So being that this little guy right here without the camera literally is like this tiny thing and could fit in my everyday backpack is something that stands out. So I'm going to be using the 24mm G Master, the Tamron 28 to 75mm, and this is my minimal setup. And I love how small and compact it is and how I don't have to worry about the motors banging around. Now, a lot of people have this misconception that just because you own a gimbal means you're going to have stable and steady footage, and that's actually not true. You have to practice. You need to get that ninja walk down, elbows nice and tight, make sure you're not bobbing up and down. Now, I know a lot of you guys watching this only shoot in 60 frames or 120 frames, but I don't want you guys just relying on those frame rates. I want your shots to be smooth at 24 frames per second, just in case your client wants to do a talking segment while you're tracking them. So right now on the screen, I have the settings that I'm personally using, that I've been using for the Crane 2 for over a year now. Now I'm using them with the Weebill Lab. And overall, there's a couple things we want to focus on when dialing in our settings. So we hop into whatever app that you're using for your gimbal, and you're going to notice there's some different parameters. You have your pan, your roll, your tilt axis motors, and then you could change the deadman and the strength and the speed of them. I like my deadband starting a little bit later, whether it's panning up or it's turning from side to side. This way, if I'm shooting in real time, I can time that movement because of how much I've used the gimbals. I can start turning, and once I see it start to rotate, that's when I know that I could continue moving into my steps, whether it's crisscrossing my legs or heel to toe walk. So we're gonna jump in the backyard and then we'll cruise down to the beach with my buddies, and I'll show you some other cool gimbal movements that you could use with the Weebill Lab. Okay guys, so now that we have our Weebill settings dialed in, what we're gonna do is we're gonna practice orbiting. I like to do this because orbiting shots are very tricky. You need to keep the same amount of distance and the same amount of momentum, speed, and also gimbal movement throughout the whole orbit. So what I like to do is I like to get something like I have right over here. This is just like a fountain in my backyard, and I'm able to practice by just orbiting it. And as ridiculous as it sounds, I like to practice my gimbal movements. Now, I do a lot of 24 frames per second with my gimbal work just because I can't always rely on 60 or 120 frames. Say if I'm doing a tracking shot or a live shot or a live take where somebody's talking or we just want to play back in real time. So there's a couple tips that I'm going to give you guys. The first one I always have to use when doing orbits is the grid lines with the diagonal marks on the back of my monitor. Whether I'm using an external monitor, the back of my camera, I like to have these. With that intersection dead center, I try to keep my subject that I'm orbiting directly in the center throughout the entire movement. Now for focusing modes, obviously I'm doing autofocus continuous, and I like to use zone. Now when it comes to the walk, I know a lot of YouTubers talk about this, but I'm gonna stress it again. We're gonna have our knees slightly bent. We're gonna roll our heels when we're moving, or we could crisscross as we're orbiting. It depends on how you like to do your movement, but we're gonna do that. So we're about to start our orbit. I'm gonna make sure I have a good amount of distance, and we're gonna try to maintain this distance the whole time. We're gonna keep our elbows nice and tight, and we're gonna walk slow. I'm using hand follow mode right now. Let's get everything in focus. We're gonna bend, we're gonna start, and once we notice the dead band start turning, that's when we're gonna start walking. Trying to keep this in the middle the whole time. Nice and slow. Okay, so the cool thing about shooting at 120 with the orbits, we could speed ramp through them, we could speed ramp and slow them down. Setting my focus, same settings as I mentioned, and now we're just gonna go nice and slow. So let's play that back right now on the screen, see how the slow orbit looks, and then we're gonna head to the beach, pick up a couple of friends. I'll show you some cool gimbal movements using this little guy. Guys, so that's wrapping up today's review on the Weebill Lab with my first impressions, and so far I'm loving it. This thing is awesome when you're traveling. Is it the best for heavier setups? Absolutely not. I wish it could hold a little bit more weight or some bigger lenses, but I totally see where Zhiyun Tech was going when it came to this small, tiny, compact, minimal setup all day long. I love the feature where you have the quick release where you could go from the bottom to the top, or rock dual tripods for the handle on the bottom. Getting into underslug mode, everyone knows, is a breeze now. We don't have to flip it upside down, and if you miss that timing, it's all over the place and you just messed your gimbal up essentially. So there's a lot of cool different accessories. The monopod works great from the creator's package with the Zhiyun Tech Weebill Lab, and I'm pretty stoked to use the follow focus too and a couple of the other accessories, but we'll do that in a later video. So if you guys thought this video was helpful, let me know in the comments below. And if you want to see more videos on using gimbals or specific gimbals or even just shooting handheld, let me know in the comments below. If you did like this video, leave a thumbs up. If you're new here, subscribe. I'm Jason Anthony signing out. Peace.